Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Chase Senior here with you. Appreciate all of you for taking the time out of your day to watch the program here, and we have a great show on tap. We are going to preview this Week 3 game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New Orleans Saints as the Birds travel to the Superdome in the Big Easy to take on the 2-0 and red-hot Saints who have been lighting up the scoreboard to kick off the 2024 season. The Birds 1-1. Beat the Green Bay Packers in Brazil, a great comeback victory, and then it looked as though the Eagles were going to start off the season 2-0, and somehow they invented just a catastrophic way to lose that game on Monday night against the Atlanta Falcons. The New Orleans Saints, on the other hand, probably the most shocking and surprising team in the early portion of September here to start the 2024 season. New Orleans 2-0, and their offense has been tremendous. As for the betting odds in this game, the over-under is 49.5. Indoors, weather not going to be a factor. Turf field, so a lot of points could be scored between, statistically, two of the top offenses in the NFL through 2 weeks. And the Eagles, prior to losing against Atlanta, were 3-point favorites. But now, after losing that game, the New Orleans Saints are field goal favorites. A programming reminder, be sure to join us on Sunday for our Eagles-Saints watch party. Game 1, our first watch party of the year against the Packers. More than 300,000 people joined us. On Monday night against the Falcons, nearly 200,000 people joined us. So that's nearly 500,000 views for our watch parties here on the show. We're expecting to do massive numbers for this game as well. We'll be live with an hour pregame show beginning at 12 p.m. Eastern, noon, 9 a.m. Pacific. So be sure to join us regardless of where you are. The best place to experience an Eagles game day outside of being at the actual game. My immediate thoughts that come to mind with this matchup. This is not a good week for a struggling Eagles defense to play the New Orleans Saints on the road, because this Saints offense so far has been dynamic. They've been explosive. They have been electric. I get it. They started off the year against an NFC South foe in the Carolina Panthers, who, in my opinion, are the worst team in football, but 47 points is 47 points. And the way that the Saints have been able to score in bunches early to pretty much win the game by halftime, it's been really impressive. They won 47-10 over the Panthers. That game was done after the first quarter pretty much. And then the Saints go on the road against the Dallas Cowboys, who are coming off a pretty impressive Week 1 win on the road against the Browns, and the Saints blitz the Dallas Cowboys. And that game was pretty much done at halftime. Very eerily similar to how the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round last year were able to boat race Dallas in the first few moments of that game and first few possessions of that game. And the Saints beat the Cowboys 44-19. And this Eagles defense, they're 27th in points per game allowed through 2 weeks. They're surrendering 25.5 points per game. A lot of that coming against Green Bay, but we know that this Eagles defense has holes. And we know that the Saints offense doesn't have a lot of holes to start the year. It was so impressive against a Cowboys defense how they were able to win that game. They neutralized Micah Parsons. They ran the ball right through Dallas. They hit a couple of explosive plays over the top from Derek Carr to Rashid Shaheed. And the offense stayed efficient. The defense was absolutely dominant. They had Dak Prescott flustered. And the Saints offensive line, which was looked at as a weakness going into this year, so far this year has been unstoppable. Now, Taysom Hill left with a chest injury. He's fine, but we'll see if he'll be able to play in Week 3 against Philadelphia. But look at these Saints offensive numbers to start the year. Yards per game, 405.5. That's third in the NFL. The Saints are also putting up 45.5 points per game. That's number 1 in the NFL. This Saints team has put up the 4th most points in NFL history through 2 weeks, tied for the 4th most points. Yards per game, rushing, 185. Alvin Kamara looks as though he has plenty of gas left. That's the 3rd best mark in the NFL. And then Derek Carr and the Saints are 11th in passing yards at 220.5. But with how they've blown the Panthers and the Saints out so early in both of their games, they haven't had to throw the football all that much. So this Saints offense, led by a new offensive play caller, who we're about to talk about here, is off to a historic start, and Saints fans are going absolutely crazy because nobody expected New Orleans to be a playoff team, let alone one of the top teams in the NFC, and so far they have looked that way. It's not just the offense, too. Dennis Allen has always had terrific defenses, and the defense has been spectacular. So this Eagles offense is in for a test as well. Now, the Saints this offseason hired Clint Kubiak as their offensive coordinator. Previously, he was the Niners pass game coordinator under head coach Kyle Shanahan. So you will see a lot of the Shanahan offensive fingerprints on the Saints offense. A lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of creativity, a lot of deception. With that pre-snap motion, which Kellen Moore likes to use, it forces the defense to look one way, and then the play goes the other, and then you get off kilter, and you start to guess, and then they gash you with some explosive plays on the ground and through the air. He does have play calling experience. When Nathaniel Hackett got fired a couple of years ago, it was Kubiak who was calling the plays. He is the son of Gary Kubiak, the longtime coach for the Houston Texans, in addition to the Denver Broncos. So it is a football-rich family, and he has this offense humming right now. And going back to the Saints' offensive line, huge question mark before the year. But New Orleans has been fantastic up front. They're barely giving up any negative plays. They used a first-round pick on Talise Fuaga, the offensive lineman out of Oregon State, who I loved in the pre-draft process. And at left tackle, some people thought he was going to be a guard. He's playing left tackle for New Orleans. He has an overall Pro Football Focus grade of 70.9. Lucas Patrick is first at his position among 68 left guards, a 92.5 overall grade. Eric McCoy is the highest graded center among 33 centers at 95.5. Cesar Ruiz, 12th highest graded right guard in the NFL at 77.2. The weakness for New Orleans is Trevor Penning, who has never worked out for New Orleans. He is the 38th graded right tackle in the game with an overall Pro Football Focus grade of 63.7. So the Saints will look to run plays to the left to stay away from Penning, but this Eagles defensive line, which hasn't been able to generate a pass rush or stop the run, is going up against a very good Saints offensive line. And you have a terrific matchup here and an interesting matchup where you have Vic Fangio, an old school defensive coordinator from Dunmore, an iron and steel town who came up in a completely different era of football. And he's seen everything that you can imagine at the NFL level, going up against Clint Kubiak, who's a new school, modern offensive coordinator with a lot of pre-snap motion, spread you out, sprinkle in some creativity and some physicality. And so far to start this year, Vic Fangio has struggled against some of these creative and new era offensive minds. With Matt LaFleur and with Kevin O'Connell, in week 2 against the Atlanta Falcons with Zach Robinson, who's from that type of Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, Rams-led offense, which operates with a lot of pre-snap motion. This Eagles defense to start the year, my goodness, it has been a disastrous unit. And hopefully they're going to be able to turn that around against New Orleans in a raucous environment. Philadelphia tied for 32nd in yards per play allowed, 29th in quarterback hits, 28th in sack percentage, 28th in tackles for loss, 27th in sack rate, 6.5 yards per carry. That's dead last in the NFL, 23rd in quarterback pressures. So Vic Fangio is going to have his hands full. And this could be a game where the Eagles offense has to keep up with the Saints offense. And that's not going to be easy without A.J. Brown if he cannot play in this game. And on Wednesday, as we record this, he did not practice. And he even told Lisa Salters of ESPN he expects to miss a couple of weeks. Now, this Eagles offense to start the year has not been the problem for this football team. It's been the defense that has been the biggest glaring issue for Philadelphia. Under Kellen Moore's tutelage and play calling and play designing, the Eagles are 6th in yards per game at 387.5. They're 5th in points per game at 27.5. 8th in rushing yards per game at $165 per matchup. And then their passing yards with Jalen Hurts, who I thought played very well against Atlanta, 10th at 222.5. A lot more to get to here during our Eagles-Saints preview, but first, Where are you at with this matchup? Who you got? PHI for the Eagles, NO for the New Orleans Saints. Get your game predictions into the comment section right now. I'll unveil my prediction coming up here just a little bit later. Eagles Now is made possible today thanks to our friends at Prize Picks, the #1 and largest daily fantasy sports app in North America with more than 5 million active members. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick 2 or more players. You choose more or less on their projected stats. And when you play $5, Prize Picks is going to give you $50. You don't even need to win to receive the $50. It's guaranteed. Some of the selections that we really like here in week 3, there is a Prize Pick special throughout the entire month of September. A half passing yard for Caleb Williams gives you an automatic win. So take the more there. I like Devontae Smith more than a half rushing and receiving touchdown, especially if A.J. Brown doesn't play. And then Alvin Kamara, more than 67.5 rushing yards against this Eagles rush defense. I'm going to go with the more there. So pick more, pick less, pick Prize Picks. Run your game with Prize Picks. Get $50 when you play 5. All you got to do is head to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS. My keys to the game for the Philadelphia Eagles to pull off an upset against the New Orleans Saints on the road. Look, it's obvious. The Eagles defense must be better. They have to generate a pass rush. They have to stop the run. They have to pressure quarterback Derek Carr, and they have to limit the explosive plays. Nick Sirianni this week said something very interesting. You have to earn the right to pressure the quarterback, and that starts with stopping the run. Well, the Eagles haven't been able to do neither, and Philadelphia's going to have to stop Alvin Kamara in this game. He's off to a great start with Kubiak calling the plays, and he can gash you on the ground, but also through the air. He's still one of the top dual threat backs in the NFL. To start the year, he's totaled 35 carries for 198 rushing yards. He has 7 catches, 92 yards, and 5 total touchdowns. What's this Eagles defense done against the run? Well, they're giving up the most amount of yards per rush in the NFL at 6.4, and their total rushing yards given up per game is 25th among 32 teams in the NFL at 157.5. If history repeats itself with how the Eagles have played the first 2 games, it's going to be a long afternoon in the Big Easy. And the Saints also have one of the most electrifying players in the National Football League who you might not know about. And that's Rashid Shaheed, who was a UDFA a few years ago out of Weber State. He started off as a return specialist for New Orleans, but the last 2 years, he's emerged as an electrifying deep threat who could take the top off of the defense, who can beat you in the blink of an eye with his vertical speed. And for Eagles fans out there, he will remind you, smaller player, a little bit slight as far as stature, of Deshaun Jackson, because he can run with the best of them. We're talking 4.2, 4.3 speed on the football field. I don't care about the pre-draft testing numbers. That is translated. That speed is translated to the NFL level. And in the first 2 weeks of the season, the Panthers have given up an explosive play over the top to him, and he also beat the Dallas Cowboys over the top. He can line up outside, inside. The Saints do get creative with lining him up in the slot where he goes up against slower defensive backs, and he's able to beat you in a blink. Key to the game number 2, Philadelphia has to win the turnover battle. And I feel as though the only way that the Eagles can win this game is if they are in the green, if they are in the plus when it comes down to the turnover battle. And the Eagles in the first 2 games have lost the turnover battle. Historically, teams that win the turnover battle in the National Football League win and cover the spread nearly 80% of the time over the last several years. It's crazy. And the Eagles have to play a clean brand of football, and it starts and ends with the quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who I thought had some great moments against Green Bay. He played a good game against Atlanta, but he's also turned the football over. And since the Bills game last year, there are some problematic trends and data following around Jalen Hurts. He's 2-7. His completion percentage is down to sub 64%. He's thrown for nearly 1,900 yards, but 9 touchdowns and 8 picks during those 9 games. He's carried it 70 times for 318 yards. His yards per carry is down to 4.5. He has 5 rushing touchdowns, by way a lot, thanks to the brotherly shove, but 2 lost fumbles. So this is a sample size here where in his last 9 games, that's half a season, 14 touchdowns total and 11 total turnovers. Can't happen. And if the Eagles lose a turnover battle, it's going to be really difficult to overcome that to beat the Saints. Number 3, can the Eagles please clean up the penalties? And I'm talking about penalties that are completely avoidable. This is a coaching issue. How many times were the Eagles flagged for illegal man downfield penalties against Atlanta? Fix it. You know that the officials are more strict with throwing the flags when it comes down to this. And on these run-pass options or these quick hitters to the outside where the play has a couple of different outcomes where you can run it or throw it, Cam Jurgens can't go more than 2 yards downfield because officials are locking in on this play. Nick Sirianni's been fired up about it, but my message to Nick Sirianni, fix it, because last year it was a problem as well. Key to the game number 4. Eagles have to silence what is going to be a loud crowd early. This is one of the more difficult places to play in the National Football League. This is going to be the 35th meeting between New Orleans and Philadelphia. The Eagles have fared well historically against the Saints. They are 19-16 all-time against New Orleans, but the Saints have won 6 of the last 10, including 2 playoff games, and Philadelphia has not won in New Orleans since 2007. Can they end that drought? And then key to the game number 5. If A.J. Brown can't play, Dallas Goedert, please stand up. Where's he been? Hasn't done much the first 2 weeks of the year. Now, this is, of course, on Kellen Moore to get him involved, but do we have to target Britton Covey a lot? Like, can we target one of the better all-around tight ends in the NFL? Like, I could sprinkle in Britton Covey from time to time, but can we get Dallas Goedert running down the seam, running down the numbers? Can we fake him as a blocker, and then he leaks out downfield or into the flat? Can we get Dallas Goedert involved with this offense? Because he's really dynamic. Eagles traded away a third for Jahan Dotson. He had 1 catch against Atlanta. I get that he's probably playing catch-up to learn this offense, but can we spread the ball around? It's great that Devontae Smith is off to a good start. Like, Britton Covey from time to time is cool. But Jahan Dotson, Dallas Goedert, can we have a more balanced and well-rounded offensive attack? And when the run game is working, can we not go away from it, especially when you get inside the red area? So I want you to predict the score. Eagles-Saints, do you have faith? Because this defense is going to have to step up. I don't have faith. Until the Eagles prove me wrong, I have doubts about this Eagles defense. So I'm going to go with New Orleans to win by 3, 33-30. I think a lot of points could be scored in this game, and this Eagles offense might have to play catch-up. So I think the Saints move to 3-0. I think the Eagles drop to 1-2, which then makes that Buccaneers game the following week monumental.